Hey there, this is Alex Kluge, and I'm here from Toronto Home Experts, and I'm here to dive into the August 2022 Toronto real estate market update. Okay, so we're going to dive into the numbers. There's some super fascinating trends that we're seeing with these numbers, and I don't want to place too much weight on August 2022, but there are some interesting signs that we're seeing in the market, and it may give us some clues into terms of what's going on in this market and what we might expect for this fall market. Anyone following the Toronto Real Estate Board numbers or watching any of these videos know that we've had some pretty steep price declines for the Toronto real estate, essentially since May, or call it end of April. And so, what we want to look at is, what some trends are on new listings, sales volume, and average price. And, could that maybe give us some clues of maybe where we are in the market cycle? Okay, so sales volume. So these are, we're comparing it from August 2021, August 22, and obviously, we're down significantly. And August 2022 is the second lowest sales volume we've had on record in the last 20 years. So, so it's not entirely surprising that we're down this big because, last August was a record month. Like typically for the month of August pre-pandemic, you're somewhere in the 7,000 range, give or take, for sales volume for August. Obviously, we're down from those numbers. But one encouraging sign is actually sales volume is up from July to this August. So we're actually up 14.6% for volume. So that's actually really encouraging. If we saw further decline in sales volume, we would probably expect further decline in price, especially if new listings are rising. But we didn't quite see that. So, is this a sign that we're market bottom? It's way too early to tell, and I don't think this is the market bottom personally. I think this might be the floor for this fall market. But if we continue to see rate hikes, like a lot of economists are expecting, this year or even early into 2023, I think we could see further price declines occur in the GTA market as well. So, but anyways, too early to tell. But certainly that's a very encouraging first sign to see that we saw an increase in sales volume. So that's great. Active listings, when we compare it to last year to this year, we're up big time. Like 13,000, is actually up slightly, from where we were last month. So again, that's not unexpected. But when we saw active listings so low last year, we were at all-time record lows for sales to new listings ratio, which signifies a strong seller's market, which clearly we're not in right now. So these numbers aren't so alarming, but we're not seeing active listings rise, which is a good thing. And what will be the most telling for this fall market is where are active listings trending in September and October. So that's where I'm really going to be placing a lot more weight on these numbers for those 2 months. So new listings, we were essentially flat from last year. What's interesting is that we didn't see a huge spike from the month before, so that's encouraging. But really, what I want to get into is the average price. If we've seen some pretty significant price declines from late spring, call it May till July. I mean, we saw some pretty significant price declines month over month. Especially for July and June, like those were pretty significant price declines, average price declines of 5%, each month for the average of GTA. So what was good news is for August 22, for the first time in 5 months, we actually saw an average price increase. So increase of 0.4% from July to August. Now, some economists and maybe some realtors might say, "Yay, this is great. Let's get the fireworks out. The market bottom is in." I'm not quite as convinced, but I think it's certainly an encouraging sign that we saw sales volume uptick and therefore average price uptick. 0.4% is really nothing. Like it's truly, it's rounding error if you want to call it that. But it is up, so that I think is a good thing, and we didn't see further price declines. But usually, what happens in a July to August market is that typically we will see the average price decline from July to August. So out of the last 20 years, 5 of the last 20, we saw average price increases, which means 15 of those average prices were declines. But 2 of those were over the pandemic. So really, you take those 2 years out, because as we know, like, that market was very abnormal, and we saw huge surge in activity in the summer months. But really, if you take 3 out of the last 18, that's not a lot. So again, is this a sign of the bottom? Who knows? But this is certainly an encouraging sign when we're seeing, sort of average prices at least have a moderate uptick from where we were last year. From where we were last month. But last year to this year, essentially prices are flat, which is not surprising. And this is average, of course. This is like, taking the GTA in its entirety. But, we want to compare really what are happening in some of the more micro markets. Now, I know, like, York Region is on a micro market, and there are many markets within that region. And same with Durham and Peel and Halton and Toronto. But, this really gives us a good snapshot of where we were in January. So, like, average January wasn't quite the peak. I say the peak probably was sometime in February. But even though these numbers are really close to the peak, you can see, like, we've had some pretty significant declines, from that, especially outside the GTA. So encouraging that we've seen a little bit of a bottom. As I said, most likely we're going to see rate hikes continue on this year, possibly into 2023 as well. And that's going to play a big factor in terms of who is able to transact. Now, we've seen, because of these rate hikes, and we saw another 75 basis points increase on the overnight lending rate last week. And that's putting a lot of pressure on buyers and putting them on the sidelines. So we're seeing fewer buyers, and that is transferring to incredible demand in the rental market. So, what I'm also seeing too is not only is there, more tenants in the tenant pool, so to speak, but a lot of sellers who maybe aren't getting their price are choosing to rent their property out, which I find fascinating, because they're getting, on average, I think it's 18.2% average rent increase year over year from last year, which is amazing. So we're actually higher rent than we were pre-pandemic average for Toronto. And some of the numbers that I'm seeing for rents on 1-2 bedrooms downtown core are astronomical. So the rental market is extremely healthy, and that's really as a result of having more buyers more buyers taken out of the buyer pool. So there's more tenants looking for places. Also, there's a new surge of immigration, which is great, that we're seeing in Toronto, that really was put on pause during the pandemic. And yes, there was some immigration that occurred, but Trudeau has this new initiative that's really looking to open new immigration to Canada, and a lot of those new immigrants are looking to settle in the GTA, which is traditionally what happens. They typically move to a big market where employment's strong, and there's lots of housing. So anyway, so good news on the average price front, that we saw that slight uptick. Again, I'm going to put more weight into the September numbers than I will on the August numbers, but it's good to see, and maybe this might be a reversal trend for the short term. Days on market. Okay, so days on market, unsurprisingly, are up from where we were last year. 16 days on the market for last year was pretty close to the record low for the month of August. And 22 is, above average, I would say, over the last 20 years. But it's not terrible. And what I'm seeing, just feet on the ground, if you've got a good property and a good location and it's priced appropriately, like it's priced, at quote unquote current market price, not at February prices, because there's still a lot of sellers out there that are thinking that the market's like it is in February, and they're holding out for February prices, and that's not happening. But if you've got a property that presents well, that's in a good location, priced appropriately, they are selling quickly. So that's showing here in the average days on market. With a more balanced market like we are in now, you would have expected the days on market to increase more, but that just goes to show that perhaps the good inventory is being absorbed by buyers, and we're really going to watch this metric as we move to the fall market this September. So as always, thank you for watching the video. And if you have any questions, like we're getting some amazing questions on social media, email, comments. If you're looking to see how these numbers affect you as a prospective buyer in this market or a potential seller in this market, and want to understand how these numbers affect you and the market value of your home, make sure to reach out to us. We're happy to help and answer any questions you might have. Thanks again for subscribing, and we appreciate watching as always, and we'll see you next month. Thanks again.